technology, so exciting, not. And I use it every day. It still drives me crazy. Right, go back to the slideshow, and from the beginning. So let me just skip down that. Right. So we'll do an introduction of what my avatar adventures are about, as we are quite unique in the type of adventures that we provide. There's pretty much nothing else on the planet like it, and there's very specific reasons for that. I will then do an introduction of myself, and Kate will introduce herself, just in case you don't know enough about her, because everybody on here, I think, does actually know Kate. Then we'll do the actual virtual tour, and there'll be time for any questions at the end of the presentation. So just to run through basically what Avatar Adventures itself actually is. We're based on a conscious business model, meaning that we're just very more consciously aware of specific elements on how we have an impact with the travel that we do. And you can read more about this on our website, which covers what I call the 7 C principles of conscious living and business. And these are principles that I have found play out fantastically in nature and are very applicable to us in our own lives as human beings and in our businesses and the way that we run them. So we are a conscious-based organization, and we offer purposeful adventures in support of specific wildlife projects. Our mission is to build a bridge through our adventures to help reconnect humans and animals, so as to help with their protection and survival, as well as our own. To preserve endemic lands and as much of the wildlife as possible through deep connection, education, and action. And our vision is really to offer a variety of unique life-changing adventures, and those really focus on specific animals that we find are very popular in the consciousness of human beings. So mostly like things like the elephants, the lions, the dolphins and whales, the wolves, the bears, even the bison, the white spirit animals, white spirit lions, and so on. And that our guests get a very life-changing experience at a deep level, so they can be inspired to really raise up and do something more, even if it's in the local area. So that's really our passion behind doing Avatar Adventures. The colors and the logo that you see all come from the movie Avatar. It was one of my favorite movies of all time. I think I've watched it 23 times now. And I specifically chose the colors and even the font to align with it, because it really touched my soul at a very deep level. And obviously the logo with the human hand, the lion, and the leaf representing the 3 main elements that we include on our adventures. What's unique about our model, and it is truly unique, there is nothing else in the marketplace like this, is the fact that we focused on creating awareness over the plight of specifically endangered wildlife species. Then we support specific charities that are grassroots level projects, rather than the bigger wildlife organizations. These include the Global Wildlife Protection Trust, the Sheldrick Wildlife Trust, and the Dolphin Research Center in Mozambique. Each adventure has a very specific animal that we focus on, and we include interspecies communication as part of the education to help connect with them on a deeper level. Not just that animal, but any of the animals we come in to contact with during our adventures. And not only do we teach you the skill of interspecies communication, we then spend 12 days helping you to apply it in real life situations. And then contribution and giving back with our time or resources is a really important aspect. It's one of the 7 C principles of conscious business. And we like to do that in every location that we go to, so that we're giving something back, whether it's our time or our resources to them. So this makes the really unique model of our adventures for life-transforming experiences. Just a little bit of history behind myself. I have been in the events industry for 27 years. I have worked in South Africa, South Africa and Europe. I spent many years in the UK before moving to Spain 6 years ago now. But my business took me all over the world. And I have done a huge variety of different events for different kinds of clientele. However, about 6-7 years ago, I had an awakening, if you like, where an enormous white lion came to visit me in my dreams. I was later to meet him in the Global White Lion Protection Trust Reserve in South Africa back in 2015, which really changed my life completely. And I had to answer the call. It's the best way I can describe it, to creating these type of adventures, and therefore gave the work that I've been doing and the experience that I've had over the last 28 years much more meaning. And so this is what I do as my business. I also do conscious leadership coaching and mentoring for entrepreneurs, those that are more awakened and want to follow a different way of doing business. And so the combination of the adventures, and they all link into each other. And a recent project called the Sacred Wildlife Project, which is very much about an online community of like-minded, awakened souls who really want to help the wildlife and our planet in taking positive action in whatever capacity they can within their own local environments. So these are the couple of different projects that I'm involved in. And now I'm going to hand over to Kate, who's going to talk a little bit about herself.
Thank you, Tamar. Great to be with everybody today. I am Kate Solisti, and I have been a professional animal communicator for almost 30 years now. And this is such a labor of love for me. In addition to the communication, I study and teach nutrition for dogs and cats. I do different types of holistic healing modalities, including flower essence support for animals. And going to Africa was a dream come true for me. When Tamar invited me, I burst into tears, and because I had been following the Sheldrick Trust for many years, and I just could not believe my extraordinary fortune to be able to actually go and meet these baby elephants, learn of their journeys, which are dramatic, and see them growing and thriving and eventually being released into the wild. And to learn from them, as well as their extraordinary keepers, about this journey and the deep, deep connection. As well as when we were, of course, there, lions, and we had an extraordinary connection with a group of lionesses that was magical. And then all the incredible wildlife, the giraffes, the zebras, the wildebeests, the waterbuck, and just the land, the magic of being with animals in their homeland. These, for me, that was so profound. They weren't having to deal with us in our human world. We were entering into their space, and it was beautiful and extraordinary and deeply moving. And so it is my great joy to be doing this trip again with Tamar. We learned a great deal from our first trip, thanks to people like Bonnie and Kathy and Beverly and Kim and all of our wonderful participants in our trip, and also from the people we were with, our amazing Memories Safari group, a locally owned Kenyan family-owned company that they took such good care of us, and we had so many wonderful friends that we met. And so it is a very special opportunity to dive deep into relationships with one another, relationships with the animals at deep, deep levels, relationships with the land, being able to be a guest of the animals, and this heart connection that is so expansive, as well as with the people of Kenya, who are so warm and friendly and wonderful. So for me, it's nothing like work. It's just joy. It's just joy. So that's a little bit about me. I, of course, have a website if anybody's interested, katesolisti.com. We can read more about my past and how I got into animal communication and my devotion to animals. So there we are.
That's perfect. Thanks, Kate. And one thing that really stuck out for me more than anything with Kate is, you know, there are many animal communicators all over the world, and they're brilliant at what they do. But there are very few that actually focus on wildlife, and Kate is one of them. And this was, you know, a real challenge for me for these adventures is to find, even though I'm trained in animal communication myself, it's not something I do as a profession. And so I wanted to ensure that we had somebody that came with us that really and truly understood that there is a slight difference between communing with wild animals and communicating with domestic animals. And, you know, Kate goes into more of that on the trip. But it's a really important distinction, mainly because then the wildlife are not humanized. So the connection that we have with them is quite significantly different, and that exchange is quite different. But we'll be talking more about that a little bit later. So I'm, you know, absolutely thrilled to have found Kate. It's like two soul sisters finally meeting up with each other, which was just wonderful, and we had the best time ever. And I just feel so privileged to have her on board. Her love for animals is just second to none. And again, one of those real conscious decisions to work with somebody who is very aligned with our values and belief systems. So I'm thrilled to have her joining us again. And we'll hopefully be getting her involved in a few other adventures that we're putting together. All right, so let's continue. And so this is the virtual tour of the Awakening to the Ancient Elephant Song. Kate, do you just want to share a little bit about how we came up with the name for the adventure?
Sure. The elephants, being such ancient beings, have such a history of connection to Mother Earth. And the elephants told me quite a while ago that they sing to Mother Earth, and they sing lullabies to Mother Earth, and they are also her ears. And so this idea of connecting to this ancient song that the elephants sing with Mother Earth and to Mother Earth is what contributed to that title.
It's fantastic. If you think about the logic, elephants' feet actually have the largest amount of skin of any animal that's connected to the land. And so they work very closely in direct connection with the energy of the land. So, you know, sound vibrations, any vibrations are very powerful for them. And they do make these amazing noises in the way that they communicate with each other, which is just, you know, it goes right to your soul and right through your heart. It's really, really quite stunning. So yes, this was, you know, the reason that we wanted to bring in the elephant song element into it. And you will experience that when you meet them in their own natural habitat. Thanks, Kate, for that. Okay, so Out of Africa, as the movie, you know, really had an impact on me when I was a lot younger, when it first came out. Besides the fact that Robert Redford is just yummy, I really, I was enthralled by the massive landscapes. And even though I was living in South Africa, and I was explaining this a little bit earlier to Beth about the difference between kind of South Africa locations and Kenya's location. Kenya, for me, feels much more like what I call the real Africa. South Africa is just as great, but it's a little bit more modernized. And so for me, Kenya has always had that draw. as far as being what I call the real Africa safari experience. And of course, in the movie of Out of Africa, you had those magnificent scenes of those huge plains of land where, you know, you saw the mass migrations going across them. And ever since then, it's something I've always wanted to do, was to go to Kenya. So a lot of this is born out of my own desire. However, the elephants, you know, most of the animals end up showing up to me at the time that I need to focus on them. And last year, or the year before last, they showed up very strongly, the elephants, for me. And so it became a natural choice. And of course, you know, Kenya's known for their iconic African elephants. They are tremendous, and especially in certain areas in Africa, in Kenya, they are extremely large. You see the largest of their kind only found in Kenya. So, yeah, that really has been the backdrop and motivation to creating the adventure. So, you know, I'm going to go through kind of not so much day to day, but the main elements of what we do on each of the places that we visit. So our first day, we will be in Nairobi, Nairobi being the capital of Kenya. Where hopefully everybody's arrived the night before with their suitcases. Bonnie. Actually, we were very lucky. Bonnie arrived 2 days before and was able to get a suitcase the day before we were going on our trip. Actually, no, it was on the first day of the trip that actually received it. Anyway, we go to visit the Sheldrick Wildlife Trust. This is their orphan facility that's in Nairobi. And they've had already about 100 orphans go through that facility and be reintegrated successfully back into the wild. A lot of these orphaned elephants are for all kinds of reasons, but generally because of a loss of land, poaching, or illness or accidents that's happened to their mothers. And what's incredible is the Sheldrick Trust travel over great distances, always checking out the reserves to ensure that there aren't any lost ones or animals that have fallen into bad situations. And if they do find them, they then transport them back. And while we were actually at the Sheldrick Trust that day, they flew in a new baby orphan elephant, which was just so adorable. They're an incredible organization. Looking after baby elephants is a lot of hard work, and it's a long-term plan. It's pretty much like looking after a child, and each baby elephant gets their own keeper, and that person is with them right up until the time that they're transported to the reintegration centers, which are more or closer to the bigger lying reserves, where they then get reduced amount of human interaction so that they are prepared to go back into the wild. Part of our trip is that all of us adopt or sponsor a particular elephant orphan that we like as part of the trip, and as an organization we're sponsoring 6 orphan elephants currently. So it is an amazing experience to go and spend time with them. We go to a general information experience, and then in the afternoon, because we're all registered orphan supporters, we then get to have a much more personal interaction with our particular orphan elephants that we've sponsored, and obviously the others that are around. So we get 2 opportunities on that day to do that. We do include a trip to the Giraffe Centre, which in itself is an interesting experience, and we'll talk more about that on the adventure. But it is very much where you can get up close and personal to the giraffes. However, it is a very commercial tourist experience, and there is a lot for us to learn from that experience, you know, looking from the outside in. But that's pretty much takes care of day 1 of our trip. Then we fly to the Masai Mara. And I chose to add the cost in of flying because it's quite a long way. Kenya is a very big country, and going between the different national parks can take hours upon hours, if not days. And so part of what we've done with the trip is try to alleviate too much of the traveling time so that we can spend more time actually with animals rather than being on the road. So we fly off to the Masai Mara, which, you know, pretty much everybody's heard. It is the pièce de resistance when it comes to game reserves. It is beautiful, it is dynamic, it is huge. And of course, it's where the famous mass migration travels through between Tanzania and Kenya. And some of these photos, the top two, are photos that we took. Well, they're actually, I'm not sure if these were actually in the Mara. Might be mistaken. They might not be actually, but they were photos taken on our trip. Just looking at them now. I need to get them in date order. So it's a beautiful experience. Just to give you some idea of, just move that. So the Masai Mara ecosystem contains 25% of what's left of Kenya's wildlife. So estimates say that around 70% of Kenya's wildlife is outside of the national parks, and they're in private reserves, which is quite extraordinary. Thus, the need for new roles preserving the Mara wildlife on private land is, of course, very important. Africa has lost some 95 to 98% of its most iconic mammals over the last 100 years or so. So, you know, these statistics are very scary. Those are mainly the elephants, the rhinos, the lions, and the cheetahs. The WWF estimates that the world will lose 2/3 of its vertebrates in the incredible short period of 50 years. So, you know, wildlife is under threat from humans primarily. And so, you know, these experiences become extremely valuable now to see them in their natural habitats. Some 70% of the world's ecosystems are under stress. Loss of habitat is the main reason. So a lot of farming land that's been taken, and therefore obviously smaller and smaller places for the animals to move. And, you know, there's a whole balance of the ecosystem that then gets interfered with, and it causes all kinds of trouble. The Mara and Serengeti parks are interdependent wildlife havens. So there's no border wall, if you like, separating the two countries, because they allow the animals to flow between the two. This is where the largest multi-species migration takes place, is between the Serengeti and the Masai Mara. So there's some more information in the itinerary about that, so please make sure you read that. Very interesting. Some of what we're going to do on our trip is, that photo in the top left-hand corner, there is actually us in the, so we're in the, you'll see Kate's blue or purple jumper on the left-hand side of the basket. Historical experience getting into that basket, I have to tell you. But that's us actually on our hot air balloon ride, safari ride, which, you know, is something you just have to do. And the lovely cheetahs on the left-hand side, there are actually 5 of them. One of them is off to the right of the picture. But these are the 5 musketeers, and they're 5 males who have joined up and basically live together and hunt together, which is extremely unusual. Sometimes you may get 3, but definitely nobody's ever seen 5 of them together. And there are documentaries that are being made about them. And they're called the 5 Musketeers, which I think is wonderful. So we, yes, did get to see them, which was amazing. And this is one of Kathy's photographs of it. We also get to spend time with the Maasai people. So basically, the Masai Mara is owned by the Maasai. It's actually not owned by the government. And all the land in the Masai Mara belongs to the different Maasai tribes. And they are an incredible people. There are only 1.5 million of all the tribes in Kenya, so they're actually the smallest tribe, but they are internationally famous, mostly for their dancing, for the jumping, and for the beautiful jewelry and color of the clothes that they wear. And they do wear those, by the way, even when they, taking the sheep out for their eating and so on. I thought they were dress-up colors, but they're not. They actually wear them wherever they go, which is incredible. And obviously the relationship between the Maasai being herders by nature has actually come into conflict with wildlife initiatives and conservation. And so there's been a need for a lot of conversations with them to work out a way where they don't feel threatened by wildlife, particularly, of course, the lions who like to come and eat their goats and cattle because they're easy prey. And so the government are working hard to find solutions to help the Maasai really benefit from their way of living. Because the traditions are really, as each generation comes along, they're fading. But they're an amazing group of people. They are very humble, and they're very poor. Their money comes from being sheep or cow or goat herders, and tourism. That's pretty much where they earn their money from. But their jewelry is incredible. They have specific teeth missing for certain reasons. And so there are some really unusual anomalies about the tribe, but some also beautiful ones where they really work very well with the land. One of them is the housing is not permanent. So the housing you see up on the top of the right is not permanent. After a few years, I think 8 years it was, they then break it down or leave it and they move on and build a whole new place. Oh, I feel like I'm losing my voice. Right. Oh, hold on a second. Sorry, not too sure what happened. Slideshow. Current slide. Okay. So we then leave the Masai Mara after spending 3 days there, having all these amazing experiences, and we go down to Lake Naivasha, which is pretty much a one-night stop because it's on our way down to the next reserve that we need to go to. It's a beautiful location because it gives us an opportunity to do a water safari, so being in a little boat, and to see hippos. And if you know anything about hippos, they're not the friendliest, lovely, darling, cute animals that they seem to be. And they are super quick in the water, so you have to be super careful of how close you get to them. But they are amazing to watch, and most of the time all you see are the eyes and the ears flicking out of the water. But they're, a lot of them in Lake Naivasha, which is a beautiful lake that has fish eagles and all kinds of other wildlife on it, including pelicans. So we get an opportunity to, try a different safari for a day, which is really lovely. And the facility that we stay at has animals walking around, as you see in the picture on the left-hand side. Last time, unfortunately, we couldn't go to that location, but we will be doing it this year. And so these are pretty tame animals, as you can appreciate, but I wouldn't advise going up and trying to touch them. I think that's pretty much a rule. So we're spending one night there on our way to Amboseli National Park. Now, Amboseli, and these are pictures that we took on the trip, is where you find the largest and the greatest of the elephants. And the reason being, as you can see in the pictures, that very flat land where there's lots and lots of greenery and water because it's quite swampish. So you'll see the colors in the elephants in the top picture there where, it looks like they're a bit dark from their tummy down, and that's because they've been standing in lovely swamp mud baths and enjoying all the lovely food, the abundance of food and water, which is why they end up being the largest elephants in the whole of Kenya. And they are fantastic, and they're very large herds of them too, which are just incredible. So, and then of course you've got the backdrop in Amboseli of Mount Kilimanjaro. And, you know, those iconic pictures that you see of elephants with Mount Kilimanjaro, this is where they take them, in the beautiful Amboseli Park. So we spent 3 days in Amboseli, and then we moved down into Tsavo National Park. Now, Tsavo National Park is one of the largest parks in Kenya. We actually go to Tsavo East because of the location of what we want to do. It's better to be situated there. And they've got fantastic facilities, one of which is the Voi Lodge, which we get to spend 3 nights at. And these pictures you see were taken all at the lodge. Now, the one on the top and the bottom left are of the watering holes that are right in front of the restaurant area of the lodge. So you pretty much don't have to go very far to have your own wildlife experience. And actually, the picture at the top are of, I would have said, about 1,000 buffalo that just suddenly decided to come down. They're the Cape buffalo, and drink. And pretty much it took them about 20 minutes or maybe half an hour for them to come and leave. Literally come down, have a drink, everything else disappears. All the other animals scatter because they're not known to be the friendliest of the animals in relation to other animal species. But they are the one animal who will look and stare at you and continue to stare at you. It would not be in your interest to do a staring competition with them because they will beat you hands down. Whereas you'll find lots of other animals may look at you and look away. Very few of them actually stare at you, but these are the ones that do. And I think they're just inquisitive, but they're definitely not one that you want to, get too close to. Let's put it that way. And I've never seen them in that kind of numbers, and those kind of numbers. And actually all we originally saw was the red dust coming, and then this black line, and then suddenly they appeared. And as they went away, just this red dust again. And then all the other animals came down. So the elephants and the zebra you see out there on the left-hand side then came back. That is Bonnie with one of, yes, it's you, Bonnie. Definitely you. I know that shirt and that hat. And that is one of the elephants at the Voi Reintegration Center, which is the Sheldrick Trust's Reintegration Center. So this is where the baby elephants go to get reintegrated into the wild. And so they're normally not the little baby elephants, but sometimes some of the smaller elephants end up there because the location's just better to move them to there. But generally, they're wanting to decrease the amount of human contact and reintroduce them into the wild. Having said that, a lot of the successfully reintegrated elephants do come back and visit the center whenever they feel like it, which is just beautiful. So we had this unique opportunity, which was just our group, with these beautiful elephants, and we had so much fun. And we're able to get really close and touch them and learn so much about them. So a lot of us got kisses, we got elephant blows, which are quite smelly and warm, but very cute. So wonderful, wonderful experience. And we'll be spending 3 days there, just before we come to our last day, which we then move to Mombasa. So we'll end up actually in Mombasa, which is Kenya's very popular beach resort, beach resort area. And we'll be spending our last night literally with that view of the picture up on the top of the right, and the hotel that we'll be staying at is the one on the left, and the views are the ones that are on the top left. So we'll be spending a night there pretty much just to relax, wind down, get our grounding again, make all the plans for our return trip, which happens the next day. And getting online, doing what you need to do. We'll have a fantastic farewell dinner, which will be on the beach, or as near to the beach as possible. And that's pretty much how we end our 12-day experience. However, there are some opportunities to continue, which I will share with you now. We also have an add-on trip, which we include for people who want to extend their stay a few more days to have some additional experiences. But what I wanted to share with you now is what makes our particular adventures so unique and all the extras that we add on as part of the price, because they are very expensive if you try to do them on an individual basis. Just going to move that again. So these are some of the unique elements that we include in our event that you don't find in most other experiences. And please understand, this is not a safari trip. This is not how it's classed. It's really about, it's a real educational reconnection, immersive experience. And we take, the education part of it very seriously. So part of this is that we have pre-event online sessions to connect with each other, so that we get to know each other before we go on the trip, because we keep the numbers quite small and intimate, because it's life-changing and a lot of emotions and things come up during the trip. So this is very important. So we do some sessions just to introduce ourselves and get to know each other. Then we do pre-event interspecies communication that Kate will host. And this is really prepping you, if you haven't done animal communication before, on how to, the elements and the tools and techniques that you need to practice before coming on the trip. And they're really easy. It's not complicated. However, it's like a muscle. It needs exercising. So we'll have quite a few exercises for you to put into practice before you come on the trip. So it's a very important part of the training. I then will do a pre-event conscious living with nature course by myself. I'll be talking really about how we can look at the 7C principles of conscious living and implement those into our daily lives. In addition, I want to really help to see how we as a group can implement those 7 principles in our trip. And so we'll be talking more about that. Then we have a great wildlife photography lesson, which will be done by our very own special wildlife photographer, Kathy Davis. She came on our trip last year, and most of the wonderful photos that you see are from Kathy. She will actually be spending a lesson with us that even if you're using a little mobile phone or a tiny little camera, it doesn't matter, it doesn't have to be fancy, because it's not a technical training, it's more of a basic fundamentals of what you need to know about photography. And it's very, very useful because it helps you to, just going through the training with Kathy already myself, I've already picked up a lot of things that I know that I do wrong. And it's never occurred to me, never paid attention to them. So very useful to help you take the best possible pictures you can take. Then you have myself as the full-time event manager and coordinator who takes care of everything that happens to you on the trip if you need any help or assistance, and pretty much checks that everything runs smoothly. We do have a tour guide with us, but he's really not a tour guide. He's more of he's a guide from a wildlife point of view. And so I fill in the gap of, ensuring that all the rooms are taken care of, that everything that you need is sorted out. And then if there are any other specific personal elements that need to be dealt with. On-site training application of our interspecies communicator for full 12 days. Getting access to somebody like Kate for 12 days is really difficult. Well, it's non-existent, basically, unless you're willing to go to Colorado and spend the time with her and pay for that pleasure. And so you have that wonderful access to Kate's assistance to help you, learn how to apply these wonderful interspecies communication tools and techniques that she teaches. Then it's private, the group, it's intimate and specifically designed to maximize our time, the opportunities and the experiences that we commune with wildlife. So even our lovely guide who drove us around last year thought we were a bit strange, because we were not like most tourists who just want to go click, 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 even though that did happen. We also just wanted to sit in quiet and connect and so on. And he actually named us the White Witches because we were having animal experiences that, he was not used to experiencing, even though he's been doing it for 8 years. Because the animals do pick up and feel our energy, and they know it's very different to most other people that are going around the reserve. And so they feel more comfortable to come out to us, where that doesn't happen with most tourists who are just excitable and pushing their energy out, and it really does tend to scare animals quite a bit. Of course, we have the 2 visits to the Sheldrake Wildlife Trust Orphanage in Nairobi, where we learn specifically more about what their project is and have that in-person experience with our sponsored orphans. Then we go to the Giraffe Centre, where we get up close and personal with what I call the angel of the bush. They are magnificent animals, and you'll get a chance to view them and feed them if you wish. Voi Reintegration Centre, that's at the Voi Lodge, or near the Voi Lodge, which again is another private viewing for our group and really is super magical. The flight to the Mara from Nairobi, and then the flight from Mombasa to Nairobi. So we'll fly you back to Mombasa, back to Nairobi from Mombasa to catch your onward flight. We call great quality of accommodation. So we've really chosen kind of the middle road to ensure that there's a certain amount of comfort, even though you're camping, which you're in tents, but you're not actually camping. It's glamping is what I call it. It's quite sufficient. But yes, it's not 5-star lodges and hotels. That would double the price instantly. So we've tried to keep a middle range while it's being as authentic as possible. Obviously, the wonderful once-in-a-lifetime hot air balloon ride, which is amazing, and they organize a scrummy breakfast afterwards, which is wonderful, and then we get to do a game drive on our way back to the facilities. The hippo boat ride on the Lake Naivasha, the Masai Mara village visit that we do, and learning experience for us to spend time and really truly understand how they live. So we actually visit a Masai village, and they share with us their knowledge. I'm also organizing that we get to meet the chief of the village, if possible, and the healer of the village as much as we can, because it's really interesting to hear their point of view of how they live and how they interact at grassroots level. We also hire higher quality of 4x4. The Land Cruiser is better because it's got better seats, it's got better suspension, and it's also got, everybody has a window that they can look out, and it also has a pop-up thing at the top where everybody can stand and actually take photographs, 360, as long as you can move around with each other on it. So these are just, some of the elements that make this adventure a truly unique experience. So coming to how much it costs, we call it contribution because it is a contribution. It's a contribution to keeping these beautiful animals protected, appreciated, and the opportunity to have that very deep experience with them. So the investment is $7,200 per person sharing. This is quite a bit higher than what we did last year, and there are a few reasons for that. First of all, it's a couple of days extra. The accommodation at the Masai Mara is greatly improved because we got a really interesting facility that didn't have Wi-Fi and all kinds of other nice challenges. And we had the Masai Mara on the last days before flying back, which was not really conducive. So that's why we changed the itinerary around. And some other additional elements that we needed to cover the costs on. And I did quite a lot of research because I'm a very ethical person. I like to run an ethical business. This is not about making profit, but myself and Kate also need to honor our time and experience in putting this all together. And when I did my research, this was pretty average for a 12-day experience without all those extra elements. So I really came up with the price from that perspective. And for me, it's an investment. It's a contribution to something that's really important, because we don't make any money out of it. Literally, the costs go straight back into the tour operators and the experiences that we get to have fun with. There is a 1,500 single supplement. This is quite high, and this is because particularly even though we're actually at the end of the high season, so we're in kind of medium season, the demand is so huge, and they don't like to give shared accommodation, like twin accommodation, away for single people. And one of the reasons that we couldn't stay at one of the lodges last year on our way was because they wouldn't give us enough singles, the amount of people that have paid for them. So the single supplement is limited. There are only 3 available. There is a non-refundable deposit of $3,600 with the registration. We do need a minimum of 6 people to make the adventure go ahead. The deposit, if we don't get 6 people, then the full deposit minus the transfer fees will be paid back. But we definitely need 6 people as a minimum to make the event go ahead. There's a maximum of 10 people that we can do in total. We can't go bigger than that because the dynamics of the group just don't work for us. There is a discount of $720 per person sharing for the first 3 bookings. 2 have already gone. Unfortunately, Kathy and her friend have nabbed those because as soon as we went live with it, she sent me her booking forms. And so we have 1 left, 1 special discount left for anybody who would like that. That will be applied once we've reached the minimum of 6 people. And so, yes, we have 8 places left on the trip for 2019. Right. In addition, because we love giving extra value, we have some bonus items. And so for the first 3 people who book, they get 2 interspecies communication sessions in addition to what we are already doing with Kate, and the Elephant Council recording, which Kate has done, and then 2 conscious living sessions with myself. If you're not one of the first 3, you still get bonuses, 1 follow-up interspecies session with Kate after the adventure, and 1 follow-up session with me after the adventure, plus the Elephant Council recording, which Kate will then send out. So those are a few extra bonus items which are completely free. Then, as I mentioned before, we have the add-on tour. Now, we do this so that if somebody wants to spend an extra few days in Kenya, they have the opportunity to do so, because, of course, the main trip there's quite a lot of traveling and lots of activity going on. This add-on tour is 6 days. You'll be based in Mombasa at the same hotel where we will end up on the last night. Sea-facing rooms, beautiful, really comfortable location. And so what we've done is we've done 3 days of kind of downtime where you can chill out and do whatever you want to do. Go swimming, go on the beach, go on a tour of Mombasa. But then we've interspersed it with further animal interaction experiences. So one of the days you will spend at 2 parks, that kind of sanctuaries that have been set up. one of which you'll see on the right-hand side at the bottom here, where again you get the opportunity to interact with giraffes really close. But Kate will be happy to know they don't do the whole mouth pellet thing. You can feed them, but there's, yeah. And you can see there's quite a barrier between them and the human beings. But they have facilities where you can walk around, and there's lots of antelope that are roaming free. And there's a lovely hippo area which you can go visit. And there's another park which we will also visit that we can have a picnic at, which is another sanctuary that has a butterfly pavilion. And you will get to see the beautiful sable antelope, which you actually don't get to see in the rest of Kenya. So they are a real treat. They've got enormous horns going backwards, like this, beautiful black horns and beautiful striking colors. So they're really lovely. And then you get to spend a day in Shimba Hills, which is a forest nature reserve, which has about 700 forest elephants in it. So that's seeing elephants in a very different setting. So the picture up on your top left hand, it's not very clear, unfortunately, but I couldn't find any really good ones. But they're smaller elephants because of, you know, living in the forest. They tend to be a bit smaller. But yes, we'll be spending the day there, which should be really fun and magnificent. So yes, just giving you an opportunity to have a few more different experiences than the rest of the trip, and a few days in between where you can chill out and relax before you fly back. That tour is on the website. You need to check for the prices, and that you would deal directly with our tour operator. That's not something that we manage. It's something that they manage. However, this past year, there were 3 of us that went on the add-on tour that we had in Mombasa. So there are people that like to go on it. And so you need to make the decision quite soon, only because you need to book your return flight. You need to know what day your return flight should be. So if you're doing the add-on tour, you then need to calculate that in. But it is a great way to maximize the fact that you've flown, you know, a few thousand miles to come to Africa, and gives you a really diverse experience of Kenya and all that it has to offer. Okie doke. So, as I say, will you answer the call for this once-in-a-lifetime adventure? Again, these beautiful, that photo down on the left-hand side isn't us, but it's of the Voi Lodge. And literally, that's how close you are, sitting and watching the elephants that come down every day, all day, for most part of the day, even in the evening, and drink. So it really is a pleasure. And then some other great photos that Kathy took. So, Asante Sana, which means thank you. Again, these are 2 shots. That one on the left is of an elephant with a beautiful Mount Kili in the background. And the one on the right is where you can walk around with the giraffes and the other antelope. What are they called again? I can't remember. Gone out of my head. The largest.
The elands.
Elands. Thank you. The elands. Thank you very much. I looked at them and was like, oh yeah, the eland. It was straight out of my head. So you can actually walk around with them. They suggest you don't touch them. And don't get too close, but they're very comfortable walking around with humans, which is quite extraordinary. So that's it. That is our virtual presentation. I hope you have all enjoyed it. We're a little bit over time, but I think we started at 5 past. But now is the opportunity to open up for any questions that anybody may have that would like us to answer. Or you can email them. So just going to go out of the share so that you can see me again. Okay, so speaker view. All right, that better. All right. So are there any questions? Yes, Beth.
Yes, is there, if we do put down a deposit and something happens, is there is there a period of time that we can get our deposit back, or is it locked in?
It's locked in, Beth, and there's a very good reason for that, because we've had a couple of situations with that. And what happens is if it then changes our minimum numbers, it doesn't work. And sometimes that's often, too close. So yes, that tends to be. So I'm happy to give it a leeway if it's something that's a very special condition. I could potentially do it at 5 minimum people, so I've got leeway for one situation like that. But it's one of the reasons that we increased it to a minimum of 6, because it nearly put our event in jeopardy last year. So I didn't want that to happen again. But thank you for asking, because that's a very good question. Is there anything else from anybody? Darla, you all right? Jill? Jill, are you still there? Jill Landry? Oh, can't see her.
She's there. She's still muted. So.
She's still muted. Okay. All right. Well, if there aren't any more questions live, I want to thank you all very much for your personal time, taking your time to come and join us. It was wonderful to meet you. And, I hope that, Bunny, I hope that we've been able to, just share a little bit of the amazing experience of Kenya. It truly is life-forming. And even for me particularly, I have decided I'm going back there for 3 months to see if I can move there for a few years. Even though I've been one time before, last year, going there was like going home to my soul's home. The people are just so sweet and generous and caring and loving, and yes. And, being African myself, it's not too much of a shock to my system as it would be for a lot of other people coming from Europe or the USA. So, I don't have my tinted sunglasses on. I have my eyes wide open. So that's why I'm trying it out for 3 months in Mombasa, because I want to be near the sea. But yes, just also to start to do some volunteer work with some animal sanctuaries and some animal facilities. And so, I think it'd just be good for my soul, part of my journey at the moment. So yes, it is truly life-changing if you allow it to be. Thank you everybody so much for your time, and I'm on email, so just let me know if there are any questions. There is an application process, and it's a really simple one. It's just a 1 page, and the reason we do that is just to make sure that people are aligned with what their intentions are, why they like to come, and if you have any specific needs that we need to consider. Because most of the time we have people from about 45 years of age up to 70, 75. And therefore, we want to make sure that everybody's taken care of in whatever way they need to be. So it's really simple. Just private message me. I'll send you the application. Everybody will probably be approved unless you don't understand it at all, which is, I don't see people like that being attracted to it. But it helps us with that process. Okay. Thank you, everybody. Good night, and hope to see you on the trip. Thanks so much, Kate. Really appreciate it. And lots of love, Bonnie.
My pleasure.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.